in that session.
Cool.
It's gonna be a little bit of a lawnmower in the background, I think, for the beginning. Hey, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
Hiya.
Hey. Oh, and I also
Cool.
it's gonna be a little bit of a lawnmower in the background, I think, for the beginning. Hey, Jane.
Hi, Jane.
It's gonna be
Hiya.
this. Hey. There you go. It's so weird because when I open Facebook to stream, then it starts this infinite loop.
Oh yeah, see that was what was happening the other day when I signed on. Was I had been watching it on Facebook, and I was in there like talking to you, and it was like doing that whole echo loopy thing.
Totally. Ellen, nice to see you.
Hi, nice to be here.
Awesome.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
Devin, nice. The illustrious Devin, nice to see you.
Looks like he's live from
What's up, guys?
a warehouse store.
Yeah.
I don't think I told you I'm gonna be starting my cooking show soon.
Oh, nice.
On set for the cooking show. So let's cook up some goods.
That's fantastic. I mean,
Dessert with Devin,
just
or you could call it just desserts.
desserts. Okay, I just want
Actually, when I look at the back of it without knowing what's on the shelves, it looks like Pure One imports.
Tier 1 imports.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen those, but it had like all the baskets from India and stuff like that, and all the shiny, all the Indian like stuff, the tapestries with the little mirror bits in it and things like that.
I've never been there. Is that an American thing?
Yeah, well, you're in America, dude.
Yeah, but I'm in Canada. We don't have the same stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Like we don't have
You're
Target.
Canadian American. I'm just like a plain old like Yank.
Oh yeah. We also don't have like what is that, Trader Joe's? I think that's like it's pretty big in America, right?
Now that's something that you're actually missing. You're not missing out on much else, but Trader Joe's.
Trader Joe's does have some cool stuff.
That's the place.
Something that I think would be a great seed for this conversation, because it's all about, service. I found this place this morning on the way back from the gym, and I was so surprised to have someone greet me that I responded with a plural. I was like, "Oh, how are you guys?" I was so caught off guard to have someone greet me and smile and like basic customer service stuff, and I'm realizing that it scares them. Like real human happy customer service. And that's one of the reasons why Trader Joe's is such a thing, because their employees get compensated, they're respected by their team, they have a great company culture, and therefore they're like making people's days at the register.
Totally, they got synergy there, hey?
It's like so simple.
They got all all the important elements together. Yeah, people really cut the corners. Philip too, hey Philip. Like
Hey guys.
Hey,
Hello.
see ya.
Hi.
Hey, Phil.
New group of us today.
Service, Devon. Talking about service, Devon. I watched a video today that Rasha sent me, which was a lady who talked about civility. She's done a whole range of research on incivility. She was talking about the impact of kindness, and that sounds like what you're saying this company is, and that kindness on the world is massive. That impact of just being kind, which is where my leading in love comes from as well. It's that whole idea of just be kind.
Totally.
What's the harm in being kind,
Yeah, you're right.
Jane, I didn't know you were such a revolutionary.
Oh, I know, it's terrible, isn't it?
Well, it's kind of prevalent anymore. People expect to be disappointed. You go out and you go to the restaurant, and your burrito that used to cost $7 a year ago, 2 years ago, suddenly up to $10, $12, $15. The level of service generally sucks because nobody really wants to get engaged in what it is they're doing. And so, yeah, that's a shocker to have somebody come up and greet you when you walk in. It's also kind of invasive, isn't it, Devin?
I didn't take it like that. I think
No, but I could see where some
I
people
think
would.
the state of the affairs is more trending towards what you just said. And with the context of this community and these calls, it's like it makes it so much easier to astonish. And the simple things are more rare than ever. So it's like it's easier than ever to create astonishing service.
Well, this lady had done some research about why people might be uncivil to each other, why they might be rude. And it was that people had associated success with being kind of, brash and stroppy and, selfish and,
Arrogance.
shouting at people when they weren't doing the right thing. Yeah, arrogant. And people, there's this thing that society has just gone, and I think this was done in the US, and I think the UK is a little bit behind, as in we got this wave of being like that a little bit later. Although from a personal point of view, being British, I just blame Maggie Thatcher for everything, so that's fine.
Yeah, we don't have a prime minister, so we can't do that.
No, but I mean, I'm not going to comment on the US politics, I'm afraid. Let me keep out of that.
And go straight to the agenda immediately. What are we covering today, Neil?
This is where I feel like, okay, I just want to point out one thing about that, which I find interesting before we dive. It's kind of all this kind of ties into this chapter, I find, in a way. Maybe this is kind of subliminally sparked by the chapter, but I read Andrew Carnegie's biography, and I didn't realize how prolific of a philanthropist Andrew Carnegie was and the impact he had on American culture, and also oh, here's Brady too. Hey Brady. His kind of the modern industrial system has a lot to do with Andrew Carnegie and his model of. And then there's the book Think and Grow Rich. The reason why I had read about Andrew Carnegie was because of Think and Grow Rich. And in Think and Grow Rich, there's this thing called the QQS system, and it's quality and quantity of service. How good is your quality of service? How good is the quantity of service? And then the S, though, is the most important, which is the spirit of harmony in your quality and quantity. So, and spirit essentially was like this harmonizing element. If there wasn't this culture that was spirited in its harmony, then the company wouldn't work effectively. Exactly kind of what Devin is saying with Trader Joe's. If there wasn't this this quality and quantity, but especially this spirit of service, then you don't get that impact that he was talking about that Trader Joe's could kind of give you. And Andrew Carnegie was kind of fiercely eccentric in this way of being. Like he was very much about creating he was there before like the modern UN, like the original kind of system that was trying to create peace around the world. And he was a big part of that because he felt that peace around the world was the most effective thing for business. And if there wasn't true peace, you couldn't have actually effective business. And it's kind of crazy how, you kind of say through weapons contractors or politicians or lobbyists and chemical companies and pharmacy companies, however you want to look at the ideologues in whatever industry, there's kind of an opposite point of view of that, like you were saying, Jane, about people who are brash and controlling, tyrannical, all these kind of warlike ways of being, which creates a disharmony and like a threat of not being able to survive if you if you don't join the corporate kind of ladder and all that kind of stuff. And it was interesting, Andrew Carnegie was, if you I'm going to let you speak in just a second, Ellen. Andrew Carnegie, if you were to adjust Andrew Carnegie's wealth for inflation, it would be far beyond Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, for the time. He had a wealth of like $400 million in 1890. It was just like when people were making 10 cents an hour. And so it's just insane level of wealth. And it was because of this QQS system, which is in direct kind of contrary to people's wealth these days, like how they're accruing wealth. Ellen.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I recently was in Italy, and I felt disappointed in the way that I felt as the most of the Italians that I had something to do with, how they approached me about being in service. I really felt like alienated, probably because I felt they wouldn't listen to me. They wouldn't allow me to ask my questions about when I had a problem. They weren't interested in listening. And so I learned a lot from that. That's actually the most easiest thing to do, as well as the hardest, maybe at the same time, to really listen to the person in front of you, and how big difference that made for me. I just felt, yeah, I felt like brushed off. I didn't feel like I was important to them. And when you spoke about peace, Neil, well, that's also because people don't really listen to each other. They only see things from their point of view. So that way, being in service, when the more people that feel like they're being serviced, yeah, it's a small step, but it's a step towards world peace, I guess.
I 100% agree. And to take exactly what you're saying back to Andrew Carnegie, he at one point had to leave America to go on a tour of Europe. And during that time, there was a bit of like an uprising in his workforce and in the labor force at the time. And the managers tried to like stamp it down, like lock people out of the buildings, and like disrupt kind of what was the labor unions at the time. It wasn't like labor unions, but kind of the leaders of the workforce. And he came back, and to his like management was like, "What are you doing?" Like, and he went and he gathered all the people, all the workforce at that steel mill at the time, and just listened to what they had to say, and was like, "Okay, so how are we gonna make this work? Because without labor, capital has no meaning. Like we over here as the partners of the company have all the money to invest in the equipment, but without you here to work the equipment, this doesn't work. So we have to find some common ground." And he was easily able, like within a few hours, able to calm the leaders of the workforce. And one of the main things that it was acknowledgement. Like some of them, they didn't even want a pay raise. They just wanted to be acknowledged that the work that they were doing was worthwhile. Like it was like at that period of time, he was like light years. He was like 100 years ahead in his way of thinking. Like all through the book, people are just, they think he's eccentric. They're like, you're crazy. He had at the end, by the time he had retired from his company, he had 400 partners in his company. So basically he changed the model of work to include a percentage of the profits. It wasn't like a wage-based system for everyone who had a technical skill. So if you were able to get off the most menial, like you educated yourself within his workforce, you began to be part of a profit sharing system. It was just, and he was all about peace, like you're saying. Like that was like, if we don't work together, we won't make any money. I can't make money. You can't make money. We can't make money. So it blew my mind. Jane.
Yeah, just draw you back to I've put the link to the TED talk I was listening to in the chat, because all of the things that you're saying about Andrew Carnegie are exactly what came out in this research that they did and also, you know, with Ellen saying listening was a key skill, truly being listened to, truly being acknowledged. These things were what people valued far more than, for example, training, career opportunities. Those were much lower down than being listened to and being acknowledged, which is really interesting as well from the point of view of the way we work in terms of this idea that you motivate people by performance-related pay and things like that. So, yeah.
I 100% agree. I even just found that recently with these gigs that we did with Moonlight Jazz, like there was some difficulties that happened like during the season, and just some kind of pitfalls in communication with different people who came to play, either in the house band or otherwise. And when Layla and I raised people's pay, it didn't help. We're like, okay, so there's something else is valuable here. And it was actually difficult to find that sometimes, to set up a proper conversation that would reveal those more important values for people. Sometimes people keep them close to their chest too, which is interesting. You're like, they would almost rather leave or disrupt the situation rather than reveal what would be most valuable. So like talking in a way that creates comfort or like open avenues of communication, that seems to be, I'm still learning how to do that like ultra effectively.
It's tough because we live in a society that's used to information going one way and then their complaints go sideways, as in they moan about them, they don't go forwards. And so we're in a bit of a society like that. But there's another piece of research around how we motivate people, and it shows very, very clearly that money isn't a motivator unless you're in a very manual-based task. So the minute this comes into it, money's not a motivator. And it's much more about how we feel and our enjoyment of the job and our sense of being involved and listened to and acknowledged. And those are the motivators. So service, you know, that's the idea of servant leadership, that leading with kindness, that leading with love. That's at the heart of it.
Wow, this is fantastic. Philip, we haven't even got to the chapter yet.
We haven't started the book yet. Devon, you started this.
Yeah, totally.
Well done.
Yeah. It's like,
Well
I got
done,
a seed for this conversation. Right away, as it starts unpacking. Philip. And then I'm gonna try and get to the book.
Yeah, try.
Yeah, exactly. That's the operative word.
Okay, this is such an interesting conversation because I think it's really pertinent with what we're doing. First of all, I have an observation and then I have a question. It's sort of like that. So my observation is, I think it depends on the construction of the company or like the resources that are available, because when you have employees who are sort of accommodated, when they feel fulfilled, when they're able to work at their best, then they are able to give a shit, basically, right? They care about what they do. Whereas when you're sort of not able to feel fulfilled, then, you know, I'm sure you've worked in places like that where, you know, everybody just kind of goes in there, just does the minimal amount of hours that they have to. The place is falling apart. The admin is crap. The customers are complaining. They get bad reviews. It's a miracle that the place is still open. You know, even the boss doesn't give a shit. But yeah, we've worked in places like that, and I think that, like, I'm trying to compare what makes the difference between the places that run like poorly and the places that run well. I think it's just that kind of that care and that facility. Like, I'm thinking, how could I provide a better service? And it's like, well, if I feel really good, if I'd have like a coach, a mentor, if my mental health is good, if my physical health is good, if I've got my friends and family supporting me. So that's kind of my observation. I wanted to ask a question out to the group with that. How can we apply that sort of with what we're talking about, customer service? How can we apply it to our own coaching? Is that just about the self-love aspect of what we do? We need to make sure that we're on our best form so that we deliver the best customer service, or is there other ways of that we can apply it that I'm not really fully savvy of? I wonder if anybody resonates with any of those observations or questions.
I'm just going to jump in just before you guys say something. I'm just going to take the lead on this because I have a story just kind of recently about that and I was talking to Nick about this in the sense of I had a really good conversation with a really high level musician or person I thought was high level who had an incredible story of who they were. And for the first little part of the conversation, say 20 minutes or 25 minutes of the conversation, I had to kind of like find my footing in the conversation because I had to work through how I felt about where they were. Like, I could kind of easily have said to them, wow, sounds like you're doing great, man. Like have a good life, you know? But I knew that there was some element that they were coming to me for a reason. And so I had to first of all, love myself. Like I had to stand in my strength of who I am and why I'm there and give myself that love and sturdiness in order to see past the successes this person was having and be able to observe how behind the successes that they were showing me that there's things that there's unmet needs, that there was kind of like a shadow or another, there was another reality that laid below this reality that was being shown to me. And that took me first being able to find my footing and that sense of self-love in order to create that way of framing the situation. So if I was to have a business or as an employee in a business, I would say the same kind of thing. Everything around you can look like it's falling apart, or everything can even look like it's being successful and that there's no need to make it better. And that you could feel like you're the least successful one in the situation, or that you don't have a lot to offer. And that could be very much a lack of self-love. Like not a lack, but just if you were to pour on the inner fuel a little bit more, you'd see behind the curtain. And be able to be even more effective in the conversation because you're there for a reason. You're not there just to like toe the line. You're there to you could be a leader in that situation where, say, everything seems like it's falling apart. It could be simply falling apart because you haven't stood up and gone, this is all falling apart. Why is this falling apart? How come you just come here and only do a couple hours? Like, hey, boss man, like, what are you doing with like your money in this situation? How come you're not investing it? Like, I want to love this place. Why aren't we loving this place? That could be, and everyone might go, whoa, wait, you're right. Why am I not doing this? So, but if you're like, no one's doing the things and everyone else seems like they're more successful than me, or all that stuff that's not giving you that power. So I'm just speaking that from personal experience. It's like there's places that you can access in yourself that are full of love, and that can love for what you're doing, love for the details, love for the people around you, and they might just need that, like that little bit of love to and then the thing shifts. All of a sudden, you're like the business is thriving, So that would be my take on it. Dennis, what do you have to say, my man?
One of my favorite phrases when it comes to service is a phrase that I picked up in a firearms training center of all places. A guy named Ignatius Piazza, who was a chiropractor, and opened a firearms training center in Pahrump, Nevada, outside of Las Vegas. Ignatius' thing was always exchange in abundance. So there was always that thing where he would talk to his instructors, he'd talk to his staff, he'd talk to the people that were purchasing memberships in this firearms training center, and over and over and over again, we would talk about exchange and abundance. And so people don't mind paying or investing in what they know they're going to get. But it blows their mind in this day and age when they walk into a business and they're greeted at the door. Obviously, it makes a difference when somebody goes out of their way to do that extra little thing that makes that special. And if we can look for an opportunity to do more than people are expecting, what kind of an incredible, it's another element of love. Love doesn't hold back. Love doesn't shortchange anybody. Love doesn't only give just enough. All right. Love gives it all out. It's you want my love? Here it is, man. Bang. Here's my everything. And it all equates to the same thing when it comes to service.
I 100% agree. And I would say, and I love that we're talking about this in this live stream, because I don't think you can put enough of this into the world. Like, if people only take away from this that love is infinite, and that you can always kind of find just at least one more particle that's going to connect you to one more particle, you can really just keep going. It's crazy. It's really crazy. Jane.
That's just reminded me of that amazing poem that says a smile is an infectious thing. You smile at someone, they smile back, you're around the corner, they smile, and that whole thing, it's that same idea, it's that knock-on effect. Going back to the original question, I think the thing about, as coaches or as musicians or however we're coming to this, or as people, it's about that being genuine. It's about that, that, as you said, that love is boundless. It's not like, I'm going to serve you, but only to this level, because actually I want this back. It's not about going into something, seeing it as a way of getting it back, because actually it'll come back in abundance. But if you go into it, see it, searching that and demanding that, if you like, you found out because it's not genuine. So it needs to come from the heart. It needs to be driven by who you are, your being and your values. That's what's important. And when you do that, people feel safe. They feel listened to. And, so much takes place within that connection and that relationship. That's huge. Relationships have the power of healing. So build that relationship. It's the healing thing that's there.
Totally. I 100% agree. And the value system really is like, when you have your value system on lock, it's just there's so much energy in there. It really animates you. If you're like, my value system is, you don't have a strong connection to your value system, it's very difficult to push through anything that's any obstacle. If you really value something that's on the other side of an obstacle, then the obstacle is just an obstacle. You're like, oh, there's
absolutely
a point where it'll be over.
Sometimes we kind of say we must have this value, so we try and do that. But the easiest way to know what your values are is what winds you up, because your value is the other side of that. If that really, really annoys you, I was going to say pisses you off, then your value is the exact opposite of that. And one of the things for me that really annoys me is people being rude. Rudeness annoys me. So my value is the flip of that. Let's be kind, let's be compassionate, let's be gentle, let's be nice. We don't need to be rude.
Totally. And if you unpack that kindness, there's so many beautiful things in it. Whereas like, if you unpack rudeness, is probably like, I don't know, we'd have to unpack rudeness. Maybe someone would come in here and be like, well, I like being rude because of all these.
There's lots of reasons people are rude, but one of the biggest ones at the moment is people equate rudeness to success.
True, and then we'd have to really have this conversation about success, I guess, about like what
Yes.
kind of success would you get? How much success do you want? I can't see being rude getting you like the full, say, global success, you know?
Well, it's short-termism. It's this quick fix model, isn't it? You know, it's like dum, 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 rudely and aggressively, and it doesn't stay fixed. It's this, and the thing about, you know, coaching through service and a service agenda for music or whatever else it is, we're going into it wanting to create continuous impact and change for that person and that individual. You know, whether it's through the impact of our music, through the impact of our coaching, or just the impact of our being in that space. You know, our drive is to have a positive impact, and that's what matters.
Yeah, and a sustained effect, like you're kind
Absolutely, yeah.
of 100%.
It's there
Layla,
when we walk out of the room as well,
no, sorry, say that again. Sorry, I interrupted you. What was that last part
and
there?
it's there when we walk out of the room as well. We don't need to be in the room for that to be what continues to happen.
Yes, for sure. It resonates.
Yeah.
Resonates for long out. Yeah, I really agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, you even get 5 or 10 people to do that. Holy smokes, can you make a massive
Absolutely. Well, you know, I ran a school, and that was how the school ran. So it was described by the staff as being their family, their second family. So you know, it is possible, but it starts with who you are and how you're being and how you show up.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly what I was saying. If you go to anywhere, you could lift a company off the ground that's falling apart by the way that you're being.
Or
And
you can put it in the ground by the way you are. You can do either.
yeah, by how you model behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. Walk the talk, as they say.
I 100% agree. Yeah, please, we're already. I love it. Layla.
Hi guys. Let me take my little hand down. So you guys are amazing, and this is, I can't look directly at you because I have to look at the road. But the last conversation that happened, I was on my way to attend a birth, and then I attended 2 back to back, and they were huge, giant processes, first time moms. And I wanted to quickly just share the 2 things. Every birth I find has big, giant growth moments or lessons or moments where, and I think it's really similar to the coaching phenomenon, if you want to call it that, where you'll find a little like gem piece and then boom. And the things that came up were, and Philip, you were asking about, if I understood you correctly, you were asking about how these things in the business over here in these big employment structures, whatever, how they can be sort of applied or used, or what's missing, or over here in coaching. Was that right, Philip?
Yeah, more or less. More or less. How can you apply what we're talking about to our coaching practice? Yeah.
So, okay. So the 2 things that came up that I think are in all, I mean, it blew my mind, was first of all, approval, like approving of yourself, seeing, not just looking out there for approval, actually screw looking out there for approval, looking inward and approving in here, and how that can be applied to our business ethic, you could say. And then the second one, which I thought was the coolest one, is the word vitality. And this woman who was she had a 36-hour birth process. The next one had a 58-hour, like I'm still cross-eyed, but the 36-hour lady, she said part of the way through, you know, sometimes I don't trust the vitality of what I am creating. And I was like, holy crap. And I just wonder then, in business world and in what we as people offer out, and maybe when it comes to, you know, to coaching or to support based service, how can we, everything else aside about all the things we can do for our businesses, how can we cultivate trust and vitality? That's what I came to. So I just wanted to like offer that up, as more of a question that maybe we all are still pursuing over time. Like, I don't think it can even maybe be answered in this moment, but just as a little, brainstorm, looking at our respective businesses and really seeing the business's vitality, the strength, like defining that word even and what it really means. And then how can we cultivate vitality? Because I think a lot of businesses that are slumping, or these ones you were talking about where the boss sucks and nobody cares and blah, blah, blah. It's like, so are they cultivating vitality, or do they just not? Is it actually that they're cultivating something else? Like, are they cultivating inner sabotage? Or, are they cultivating pure, I don't give a fuck energy? So anyways, with all the love, I think the concept of vitality and the concept of really, so looking at the business that one creates, being like, okay, trusting its vitality, and now how can I nourish that? How can I cultivate that as time goes on? That's my little moment. Bye, guys.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. That's a good way of putting it, vitality. I could comment, but I'm not going to butt in too much.
Yeah, Devin, I want to hear Devin sing this spark, Devin. So I'm gonna get out of the way.
I'll share a little bit of a spark. Thank you, everyone who shared. And that question is such a epic question of how can we trust vitality? How can we trust in the vitality? And thinking about the conversation where it's been, as well as the chapter that we've been like aiming towards.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about needy is creepy. And I keep hearing that through line in company culture, as well as ourselves, how we show up in our practices, of when we meet our needs, we can show up for others. And the difference in a small pay grade, maybe at something like Trader Joe's, where the employee feels like they're getting their needs met because they get $2 more an hour. I mean, I don't know the actual numbers. Or where Carnegie sits down with the people and goes, what's actually going on? They feel acknowledged, they feel like they're getting their needs met. And it's not even necessarily, like you said, a financial thing. Maybe they don't need a pay raise, but they need to have their needs met. And then circling into kind of more where the chapter is going, I had my first like real mentor. It was like, this sounds deceptively simple, but basically your biggest job is to have the best day possible every day. It's like, take care of you. All the things that you think you're going to do when you have the business, like the massage once a week, or like going to the sauna and like, taking care of yourself at the next level. When you do that stuff now, and we have that day now, we're coming from a place of overflow. We can pour into the business. We're lucid and able to go, hey, I see an opportunity to help. And it's just such an interesting place to come from, of going like, oh, our actual work is to make sure our needs are met first. And to segue, love the hard part is making sure that we're meeting those needs, like tactically as well. And the final piece, I know I keep like tacking on. I overviewed this chapter. It was like, oh, right. This is everything in action. He was talking about all the ways that people were being needy and being like stingy with their giving and with their service. And then when he threw that out and goes, I only do 2-hour sessions with people. Like, that's the first way that I serve people. I won't cut it short. I'm not going to do these 30-minute taster sessions. And he's like, that's when it started working. So I just showed up and I gave back.
Yeah, and I especially really agree with that last part. Like I was having a conversation with Nick about this. yesterday actually, because I had a 2-hour kind of deep dive with a potential new client. And in it, I realized that there was times when I could have kind of cut through some of the conversation and got to the root more often. And I realized that if I perfected the skill of really getting to the meat of what would help the person, that we would hit a transmutation many times, and it would just grow. I was like, wow, my skill here. It's not that I don't have the skill, it's that if I cut the fat here, this 2-hour session could be really what Rich Litvin says, like give them the most powerful conversation they've ever had in their lives. And then don't leave them in a state of finances, leave them in a state of possibility. And the power in that. The power, not just the power in that of like for me, but the power in that when they leave the conversation and go out into the world. And I think that kind of comes back to what Layla was saying about vitality. Is like, can I create that powerful transformation for someone? Do I have that ability? Could I do that a few times a day? Could I sustain that day after day? Like, can I trust myself to birth the baby of my business? Like, can I go through can I work out every day for 6 months solid? Like, can I just go and go and go? Do I have the vitality? Do I believe in myself enough that that thing is there? And it comes down to this, like, to me, what you're saying and what Layla's saying, what other people said in this is, and it has to do with, I want to talk about this book here. It's like, but like what you're saying about being stingy with service and just holding back. Like, how often do we just hold back because we don't exchange, like Dennis was saying, for abundance. We think that we don't have enough vitality to give and give. That love isn't infinite, that we can't live in this service, that we can't slow down enough to make this impact, that we have to rush around, like Jane was saying, be rude and try to get to what we're probably. I think that what springs to mind is something that Devin, you had put on Instagram about the fear of death. Is there? You're not actually afraid of death. You're afraid of not having enough time, and thus you're afraid of not having enough life, which is really like saying you're afraid you don't have enough vitality, that there's not enough life in you to do all the things that you want to do, like on a daily basis. I'm just gonna go with Jane, and then we're gonna.
Well, mine links to the chapter, because in the chapter he talks about when he slowed down and focused on service, his business grew. And I was hearing in the things that were said just now, this thing around maybe I was told at one point, you serve too powerfully in your sessions that you're not charging for, because then you're not holding back. And I said, I can't hold back. There's no way I can hold back, because what I'm doing is I'm in that space and I'm serving that person. If there's something that comes up in that conversation, I'm going to go with it, because I'm not going to go, oh, I'll hold that back just in case you sign. Because my focus at that point isn't, can I sign this person as a client? My focus at that point is, I'm serving this person. But I think that thing around slowing down is really important, because I was hearing you saying, can I keep going? Can I keep doing this? And there are two things that I wanted to say to that is, sometimes you won't be able to. Sometimes you'll turn up to that conversation and you won't be able to give your full self, not through any fault of anybody's, but just you won't be there. And the best thing to do at that point is to acknowledge that right at the start. Because if we own that, today isn't the right time for me. I've stopped coaching sessions either because it wasn't the right moment for that person, or it wasn't the right moment for me. And into the conversation, I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, I'm not fully focused on you. I'm too tired, or whatever it is, or I'm building a bug, or whatever it is. I'm not fully focused on you, so you're not going to get my best service. And equally, I've had clients turn up and they're not fully focused on them. And if very soon within the conversation it's clear that they're not able to bring themselves into that space, why continue? So that's something I would put out there. And that's also part of that slowing down. Sometimes we move forward faster when we take things slowly.
I 100% agree. I feel like that when I'm trying to lift a lot of weight. It's another thing too that I find in what you're saying, Jane, too, as a way to I definitely acknowledge that sometimes it's not the right time. I also somehow find that if you acknowledge it's not the right time, suddenly it becomes the right time. Like people are like, it's like, I'm too tired for this. I'm really tired. But you know what? I'm pretty tired, but I think I could go a little bit further. You know what I mean? And then like, but now I'm really tired.
Well, the elephant in the room is out there, isn't it?
Pardon?
Once the elephant in the room is there, that you're not exercising yourself around that, are you? And you might have released that. You might be thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to struggle here. And the minute you voice that, actually you realize that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
So because you've released that pressure valve,
you
slowed down and you've given yourself that space in your brain to fully focus again.
I 100% agree. And I like that's something for me. I really have found that, especially say if I have a big teaching day, I'm like when I used to teach a lot, sometimes I'd have to just be like, just take a second. I didn't even need a lot sometimes. It was just like I'm stretching me out. I'm just revving myself up. It's not just slow it down. This isn't about the student. This is about what I think I need to be, rather than just kind of taking stock for a minute and yeah, like you're saying, slowing down. Then suddenly I find like a little extra energy reserve. If I just stop for a moment, reset, sometimes that's the biggest thing is like just take a moment, just like time out. Okay, I'm going to try now to just jump into a little bit of this book. I even just want to do this very first part of the book because I feel like it pertains to what we're talking about, which is this safety is the enemy of success. Be proud of your mistakes, take a risk, fail spectacularly, and then go out and fail more. And Layla and I were even in a way talking about this today, just this kind of like, sometimes you want to be like, sometimes it's important to be safe. There's no doubt about it. You don't want to stretch beyond your limitations. But then there's other times where maybe you're just being you think you're being safe, but really you're just hesitating. And that I think that shows up. It shows up for me. Sometimes I could be going just a little bit further outside of my comfort zone and maybe making a mistake or taking a risk, and I just choose not to because I don't think it's safe, or I think that my responsibilities, I start being like, oh well, what about my responsibilities, or I shouldn't spend that money, or I shouldn't do that thing, or whatever it is that's kind of saying to me, don't take that risk. And so even though we've talked so much already, I would kind of like to hear some of your guys' thoughts on that, because I think it connects into like that stinginess and not enough service, or like, when there's a lot of I've noticed with a lot of people I've worked with in the music industry, they're worried about taking risks, or they're worried about doing more than they say they're getting paid for, or something like that. And then it seems that they don't get as far as they. Alan, you really worked on this, I think, recently, so I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I love that quote. As some of you know, I posted it as my kind of speaking it into the world, that I am now a coach, and I declare that I am taking on clients. And the thing that made a difference for me was the idea of how seriously I take life up to now. And that Michael Neal said that something like, life is too important to be taken seriously. And what if it was just a game, the game of life? So looking at this client enrollment and coaching as a game really helped me take that important step to move forward. Stop taking myself so seriously, as a lot of musicians as well do, because and we are afraid to make mistakes because we think it's important not to do so. When it's actually the opposite, that's the reality. It is from our mistakes that we learn, or if there's such a thing as a mistake, you know. So just viewing that in different angles, and of course with some help from Nick, but also a lot of self-coaching is extremely valuable. And I see that the more I get to know myself, the better I will be as a coach, and the better I will be able to be of service of others. So taking this leap for me was very important also to kind of feel how it must be for a client to ask for guidance or support. That could also feel frightening. So yeah, there's so much to learn when we just start viewing things as hard or divide into what's right and what's wrong, and just take a step and see what happens. If you are connected with yourself and you know in yourself that this is the right thing for me, then yeah, you can't go wrong.
That's fantastic. I really love what you said too about like you're walking the path that eventually your clients walk. So then you have empathy and can acknowledge them and see clearly what it's like to take the plunge and do coaching or put yourself out there as a coach or put yourself out there in any way or contact someone and ask for help, or they're monumental moments, like when I contacted Nick and started working with him. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was a huge shift for me. And I kind of circled it for quite a while before I actually, jumped in the pool, so to speak. And now I also have that sympathy or that empathy for potential clients that work with me, Like I had a conversation with someone who was super awesome, and I've been talking to them off and on for like 6 months. Who knows if they work with me or they find someone else to work with, but just the fact that this whole thing takes time because it's so powerful. Brady.
Yeah, what's up, everybody? Something that came up for me as you were speaking, Ellen, is this vision of a child playing and exploring perhaps for the first time. And with that vision, I started kind of thinking about, well, when does a child learn that something is unsafe? And who does that child learn from other than the parents? And so let's say that the child is now playing in a zone of like impact or what have you that the parent perceives as unsafe. All of a sudden the child feels unsafe, even if everything is right and he or she is totally safe. And so this idea, like something that stood out too, it's like there's no such thing as a mistake. And so I think about the difference between the child that has the like the nervous or fearful parent versus the child who has the parent whose nervous system has the capacity for the child to explore and experience what the parent, or differently than the parent got to experience, you know, or whatever. It's like there really is no such thing as a mistake. Like Devin, something I've learned from you is there's only feedback. There's only feedback. And so with that being said, I noticed this really deep pushback to safety being the enemy of success. There's a part of me that thinks that that's a mistake to perceive safety being the enemy of success. And there's a part of me that says, well, if safety is the enemy of success, then that would cause me, the child, to suppress or repress how I feel in the experience of feeling unsafe or experiencing unsafety. It would cause me to not even notice when I feel unsafe, which would cause me to shift my identity and deny what's true in a given moment. So in my experience and just through my lens, I perceive safety being the greatest ally of success, especially for the person who has this big mission on their heart to impact humanity, because that's going to call them to be somebody they've never been. And so if they're denying the experience of unsafety, they cannot become the version of themselves they're called to be, which is successful in all the ways. And then I can also see that once you've arrived as if we can arrive to a place, it's like once you have integrated the embodiment of the next version of yourself, well, then safety starts to reflect complacency. Safety starts to reflect comfort. Safety starts to reflect a reason to stop changing. And that's when it actually is the enemy of success. Perhaps. And so for me, there's this kind of that this is me just kind of unraveling this mild complexity of, well, like I can see how safety is the greatest ally of success, and I can also see how it's the enemy of success. And I think, and I would assert that it depends heavily on where the individual is at in their journey.
Go for it, Devin. Is that you putting up your hand?
I love that we have a philosophers roundtable.
Mhm.
These conversations are great. I think there's a beautiful distinction there. And I see where you're pointing. And I feel like internal safety and kind of coming from that not needy place and kind of, filling up our cup, making sure our needs are being met. When we are safety, then when we can go lean into things that are not safe. And I think that's what it's pointing at. At least that's what feels useful to me, is like, I want to feel safe in me. I want to bring safety to a call. I want to bring safety to a client session and be the safe space that someone can, if they choose to go that. But it's like, it's only my ability to feel safe in myself that allows me to go do things that others might be like, that's not safe. Like that looks really risky. You're like, yeah, but I got me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that's, that's another thing that stood out while Ellen was talking. It's like we can meet others only as deeply as we've met ourselves. And so if we are denying ourselves and repressing what is deeply true in order to be some version of ourselves that we think we need to be, then there actually is no depth. We're actually leading a process of disembodiment, not embodiment.
I love this. This is great. I love this pushback too against this Brady. This is also one of the things that I was really hoping would happen in these conversations, is because this book is not infallible, and these sentences aren't written in stone. There's many ways to play with them and toy with them and ask questions like that. And I think that's a great question to be asking, because I'm sure I think that and that distinction that Devin brought out there, these are the kinds of things that's going to help lots of people. So I think that's so powerful for you to push back and make those statements. Because I would agree with you that if you're stretching yourself beyond your limits and taking risks that aren't useful because you think that safety is the enemy of success, just as like this bland overall general theme, if someone was to do that, then yeah, I absolutely agree. Then it's been misinterpreted, and it could be easily misinterpreted like that. There's many people, it's almost would be born of a sense of desperation, like, oh no, I'm not in a place of success, and the enemy of success is safety. So I should do whatever is possible. I should find as many unsafe things as possible and do them, and in that, and risk myself. And that, I absolutely agree that would be a disembodiment. That's not a truth. And that being secure in yourself and safe in yourself because you have chosen to look deeply into yourself and be safe with your, what I call your inner roommate, like the person that's like always with you, if you're not with that person, you're not with anyone, then you can't take, like Devin was saying, like real risks, because you have yourself to always come back to. And also you are the safe person in the room, which is so integral to taking risks as well in my life, and is to be like, okay, am I here? Am I checking in with, am I here? Okay, I'm here. Okay, so then let's take some calculated risks, You can almost say that uncalculated risk is the enemy of success, or something like that.
Mhm.
I also think too that this sentence, safety is the enemy of success, only works in conjunction with the rest of the sentences, like be proud of your mistakes, fail in a spectacular kind of way, like in the sense of this outward
Mhm.
motion. But I love that, man. I was so potent. Thank you, Jane. Love to hear how you weigh in on this too.
Yeah, for me, I wonder whether I would use comfort zone is the enemy of success, and see things in sort of these three tiers. You've got, and in teaching, we kind of look at things and we go, you can't learn in your comfort zone, because you're just doing the things you've always done before. And if you've always done what you've always done, you always get what you've always got, don't you? And so that's where I see safety as the enemy of success, just doing the things you're used to doing. You're not going to grow if you carry on doing that. You're in your comfort zone. And then there's that idea that the flip side of that, and this is where it's not safe, and therefore it isn't successful, is panic zone. If you take a step that pushes you or is well beyond your current skill set, actually that's also not helpful. So where you really want to be sitting is in that middle bit, in that learning zone that says, you know, I'm not comfortable because this is new to me. This is outside of my current experience, but it doesn't scare the pants off me. So, you know, it's scary, but it doesn't scare the pants off me, if that makes sense. And so that makes much more sense. And I was kind of thinking about this earlier, and I was thinking, because I saw a program about a guy who's summited Everest more times than anybody else this morning. And I was thinking, you know, it's like you set off and you go, right, I want to be the best mountaineer in the world. So the only way I can be the best mountaineer in the world is I have to climb Everest. And you go to Everest Base Camp to try and climb Everest. But you haven't done all of those other things you need to do along the way. So you're going straight from, I can walk, I can climb, to climbing Everest, when really you need to be in your learning zone, not the panic danger zone. And in that case, safety is definitely not the enemy of success.
But it would be if you just went right from like your couch to try.
Exactly. That's the point I'm making. Yeah. So it's like this distinction between comfort zone, which isn't a sensible place to be, learning zone where you will make mistakes, because that's what learning is. And I've put it in the chat. Fail is first attempt in learning. And without failing, you don't learn. And that's proven psychologically. And then panic zone, which is just pushing yourself too far.
I really agree. Let's keep it moving, because I'm loving this. Everyone has something. Lots of people weighing in on this. Ellen.
Yeah, it's kind of what Jane said and what you said, Neil. I really love that distinction you made, Brady. Because what is being safe? To me, it's like feeling safe can come from two different places. It can come from what I think is safe, or what I know is safe. And when I know that I am safe, no matter what, it's easy for me to do things that I just think is scary. Because then my pants will be clean afterwards. So yeah, I felt like this when I put my note and my post out, but I knew that I was okay. So I was coming from a state of being rather than doing. When I know that I'm safe. And when I can see that as a foundation for life, then there's not much that seems scary anymore, because scary and dangerous are two very different things. It can feel scary to talk to this or that person high up in the hierarchy, but I know that, well, what harm can it do? They're humans as well. They get nervous, they get happy, everything. We are basically the same, but other people would think that is scary. So they detach themselves from that task. And then that's, of course, then it becomes the enemy of success. That's because I think I can't do this because, or else I'm not safe. So to me, it's become very important to have a distinction about what do I think is not safe and what do I know is not safe.
I'm loving this. This is fantastic. I think that ties into what you're saying, Brady, really deeply, because the more you explore yourself, the more you know if you're safe, compared to kind of being able to tease apart the heart from the mind, and hear when the mind is just kind of rattling off the potentials, and the heart's like, no, no, we got this. But if you can only get there if you have embodied yourself, like you were kind of saying. If you're disembodied, then chances are you're just going to see the whole thing as one big slew of fear and panic, like Jane is saying, you know. I think that those kinds of things are I know people here probably don't like Trump, but so I was gonna throw this in here as a hilarious thing to just rattle all the feathers. Trump was talking about how, and you know, bear with me, but he was talking about how he was something like $7 billion in debt, this massive amount of money in debt because of his real estate business. And one of his employees came to him and said, I'm really nervous. I'm having trouble sleeping at night because I have this new mortgage, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to like pay this mortgage. It's a 25-year mortgage or whatever, and there's interest on it and all these kinds of things. And Trump, take his name out of it, but realized that he was sleeping no problem 8 hours a night with $7 billion in debt. And that like made him realize that his risk levels and his ability to see what was actually scary and dangerous compared to what wasn't, like that's what helped him get to that level of success. So that was one of the things that helped him get to that level of success, was being able to kind of see the difference between, like what Ellen's saying, is a fear in your head, and then what's a fear in your heart. So we could just remove his name out of it, but I just found it to be an interesting kind of realization for someone who's in business, because in business you have to be able to take risks, and you have to be able to tell the difference between when something is actually bad and dangerous, like Ellen was saying, or a panic-based risk, like Jane was saying, and then something that's just kind of like in your head, like chances are that employee's going to pay his mortgage. He was Trump's employee, so maybe he was really just trying to say to Trump, like, you got to pay me more money. But if we just take that out of this, you know, out of the equation, there's just that kind of shows the difference between the employee, employer kind of mindset, or the business owner, laborer mindset, and the different types of fears that we can have when we take risks and leave our comfort zone, and how big of our comfort zone is, and what we consider to be risky. Layla, your camera's
Hi.
off. Okay.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So it just can we just for a second look at the word enemy too, and the concept of enemy, because enemy, to begin with, like no matter what we put before or after, if we're putting enemy into a thought or into a state of, you know, looking at the world, or the way we're perceiving, or the way we're an enemy, we automatically have positioned ourselves against something. And I just want to I get the safety, and I get the, you know, and I'm totally guilty of sometimes being like, oh, I don't want to do something like that. Okay, so fine. But also, we can, I sometimes it's when we feel that, or we're looking at something as an enemy or against, I think it's really important to almost use that as a signifier of, but what am I really for right now? Like, we often just want to be against things, and, you know, maybe against something that feels freaky, or against what we might consider safe, or all these different words. And I think that's fabulous, but it really makes it very black and white. Like, it's really like, well, it's this or that, or it's this or that. It's like, hold on, if we took out enemy to begin with, like the sentence was, what was it? Safety is the enemy of success, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like when we put enemy into anything, I find that we are blocking and narrowing possibility. And I was I'm just gonna pull over because this is exciting me. I was at a birth that I was at a birth where the lady had done really well, and she was a VBAC, which means natural birth, vaginal birth after cesarean. So super risky. Nobody at hospital would take her on. No doctors would take her on. Risky in the medical perspective and medical management, but not risky in traditional birth, which is where I function in. And she had gone all the way through her birth process, had birthed out this little wee baby boy. He was under 5 pounds. So there was a chance that his weight was kind of off. And I mean, her dates were off. And I had to, I felt called at one point. He was really having a hard time breathing. And I actually wound up leaning over her shoulder and giving him breath of life, which is the most psychedelic thing in the world. P.S. side note. But because of the level of stress that she'd experienced in witnessing her baby basically come out, you know, small and close to dead, and her hubby had called in medical management, had called in the paramedics. He started breathing before they got there, but then there they were. So I before that had existed in a state of mind and a way of being and a way of servicing where medical management was the enemy, quote unquote. And not only that, when we talk about safety, that it actually is unsafe to, it's more safe to birth at home. And now there's all kinds of research saying it now too. So even in terms of like enemy and safety, you know, we could say that in my world, the success of this woman's birth, you know, that safety or lack of safety in that world, that was the enemy, you know, like that was the thing that I stood against. And there I was in this process, in this situation where it was really there were two mindsets, there were two paradigms being offered. And anyone could look at them and say, wow, these are enemies. You know, one is like, fuck the man, fuck the system. And the other one is like, we love the system. We are the system. Listen to everything we say. What was incredible is which is what I want to share, is that when after 3 hours of the next phase, which is where the placenta comes out, after a 3-hour process, and the medics had been there the whole time patiently. I mean, they were fantastic human beings. It was either get in the ambulance and go to the hospital, or sit here and there's a risk of you hemorrhaging. Those were the two things that were being offered, two choices, both standing in direct opposition of each other. And it was almost like this stalemate, like, you know, that the concept of there being an enemy, the one medic, she didn't like me at all. The guy was cool. You know, that there was this like friction between these two, what could be considered two choices or two avenues of forward motion. And I rooted into letting go of the concept of enemy, plus or minus safety, all that stuff. I'd let go of the concept of enemy. And I was like, okay, wait a second. What am I really here for? What am I standing for? Not what am I standing against? What am I standing for? And the woman offered up a bit of her own process that she didn't want to get. I don't have to get into details. Point is, all of a sudden, as soon as I really focused on what I was for and took out the enemy, the concept of enemy, or what I was against, a third option came in through my mind. And I was so surprised to hear me speak and offer a suggestion that was actually about using the enemy to support her safe process. So I just, when the sentence was said, and then we're all talking about, I respect all the words that were said. I just wanted to pull it all the way back just for a teensy weensy second to that. That's what it made me think of, was that sometimes solutions lie in our enemies. That's what I learned. And it was deep and it was insane. It was honestly, I I couldn't believe that I was saying, you guys, what if we call the hospital? And instead of her going to emerge because there's no emergency, she gets funneled right into maternity, and she has a managed third process. They pop her with a bit of synthetic hormone, placenta pops out. If something was, crazy happened, she'd already be close, because we were very rural, very, very far out. So there was, talk about safety and risk, right? We're talking about like life and death. So I just wanted to share that was the first time that my own stark, oh, that thing is my enemy, whatever that thing is, oh, that thing is my enemy, I'm not going to touch it. It was like, holy fuck, actually, there are solutions in my enemy. And it blew my mind. And forevermore, when I'm presented with people giving me two choices, or there's avenues of choice and decision, I'm like, I don't even know if these two are the only two. There could be three, there could be five. Like, what if we come at it from the place of being four, just strictly four? Then what are those endless possibilities? What are the possibilities? Why does it just have to be, one or the other? So love everything that was being said, and by no means do I mean to devalue any of it. I just really wanted to poke in at that enemy bit, man. That one word, fuck, we got to get rid of that enemy word, I think, entirely. There's no such thing. It's ridiculous. Thank you for holding space.
It's crazy when you highlight that part, because that it's like almost like that one word disturbs the whole sentence. You know what I mean?
Like, what does the sentence become when you take what is the sentence then? Like, when it's not enemy, or how does it how's the sentence does it even have any I mean, no offense, Mr. Dude who wrote the book, but it doesn't even have any value, really. Fuck, who cares? Enemy bullshit. Like,
Yeah, and I agree, and that's one of the I love these kind of conversations for that, because like there's no part of me that looks at this kind of stuff as a set in stone. Like, we couldn't push back. Like, we're all free thinkers in these circumstances, and it's important to me that we do that. That's where the real work is. I would say that the word enemy, kind of disturbs the sentence, and it creates a conversation around something. Like, you could say it's good because it makes us have the conversation, but you could also say that it doesn't get at the real point. Though I think that we were able to negotiate that and get to the real point, which is we do want that inner safety, and we do kind of want a sense of success. And the enemy thing is kind of does then obscure it, kind of like Brady says. It starts to bring up this, suddenly you start to have a discussion about this in a way that maybe was fruitful for us, because we're able to see the different layers of it, but it could go off the rails. And there's definitely must be another way to say it that doesn't have to do with setting two things against each other. Like, do we need to set safety and success against each other?
It's almost like how, if it's coming from a place of against, then whatever this whole thing taught me and just ripped open my insides and all of my preconceptions, it's then trying to reframe all these moments as setting them for, so instead of focusing on the safety bit as something that could be against, we can use my screen doesn't show her name, the lady
Ellen?
who was speaking, where it was like, sometimes, like she was saying something dangerous, or these distinctions. It's like, okay, well then, if we're just always coming at what do we have to do, what do we have to speak about, how do we have to be for success? That's actually what it is. Just what in this moment, really presently, in this exact moment, how do I have to be for success? Not what am I being that's potentially going to thwart it? No, fuck that. No, we're never going to thwart it if we're just in every moment for it, always, you know, because then there's endless possibility. There's a million solutions. There's thousands of ways forward. There's not just that sort of, you know, black and white kind of like this way or that way. So, yeah.
I love that because I think that also connects to with what Jane was saying about slowing down. Like, I think a lot of this comes back, this conversation in a sense comes back to capability, like vitality and capability. If you feel like you're capable of doing something, even if the situation is dangerous, you know, or someone might look at it as dangerous, you might not consider it dangerous because you feel capable in it. Like you might feel safe and be successful because you feel capable and like you have the vitality to do it. And then there comes down to this situation where, you know, like failure is not a bad thing. Mistakes are not a bad thing. We're not against making mistakes. We're not against failing. We're not against, like, what are we for? We're for success. We're for discovering ourselves. We're for, you know, making an impact. Or and that's true. It's like the more that the less time you spend thinking about what could go wrong and spend more time thinking about what you're going to do to make it go right and being slow about that, then there's a better chance that it's going to work out. There's maybe not 100% chance that it's going to work out, but there's a much better chance it's going to work out. It's like when you're committed to success, you know, it's like almost like if you could, this whole thing could be changed to just be committed to success. Like, you know, like you're going to put it in very simple terms, very pointed terms, and then unpack, then the conversation changes into what's success for you rather than what is the enemy of success? Like, because we have to start defining the enemy and all this stuff, and then I'm not sure if that's necessary in our modern world. It's a very old way of thinking about things. Like cultures and in the past have been very much born out of their conflict with each other. I'm not this, you know, like the harmonic scale in music comes from the fact that the Turkish people would use the melodic minor scale, and I can't remember. There's another group of people in that area who created the harmonic minor scale just to be like, we don't make the same music as you make. You know, it was like a way of defining what they aren't. Those things have been forgotten though. What's left is these kind of tools that were used. So is it the only way to go about things? I don't know. But I like that. I like that whole enemy thing. Kind of removing that. And I also love, like, for me as a very rebellious person, I love pushing back against things. I love just tearing them apart and just taking on what I find useful.
Just a quick thought on that. I think if we define an enemy, then we deny half the world, don't we?
Yeah.
Ourselves. If something's the enemy to us, then we deny the existence of that in our own space. And that's
so limiting.
That's contrary to kindness, isn't it?
I like when my father has this quote. He says, there's only two sane people left in the world, you and I'm starting to doubt you. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's really, I always find that hilarious. And it's true, because once you get, the whole world could be your enemy. And it's very easy to have a worldview where everybody is your enemy and you lack the trust. And I think that really comes down again to a lack of vitality or a feeling of not having enough vitality, a feeling like you're not capable of handling a situation. Like how many times,
and actually feeling unsafe within you.
yeah, feeling like if you were to have like Ellen was saying, like having a conversation, being afraid of having a conversation with someone, like that, getting in front of that, like every conversation is improvised. So if you don't feel like you're not going to say the right words, or you're going to trip over your words or say the wrong thing, you know. But if you feel capable, then you can enter in lots of situations and slow down and say the right things. Or even if you say the wrong thing, laugh it off. You're like, oh, well, that's not really what I, like they say in music, like music is 9/10 recovery. Like you make a mistake, it's like, oh, well, how fast can you get back to it, And that's true mastery to me. That's when that it's not about playing a piece perfectly or having a perfect conversation. It's about what do you do when things could go sideways? How do you nudge it back on board? Because you're for a good conversation, you're for success. Well, this has been I'm not even sure what to say at this point. We're like 7 sessions into this. We didn't even read the book. We did, though, in this crazy way. People referred back to the book in different parts of the book. And then we tore apart parts of the book. I hope that Rich Litvin gets to read or hear this at one point. He goes, oh my God, because it's Rich who wrote this part. So I'm really happy that that this group is just so incredibly adventurous and dialogues on such a high level. I'm personally very grateful to have you guys here and to be able to facilitate this to some degree. I don't even need to at a lot of points. There's just so much action in between people. It's fantastic. I think if I was to sum up this whole thing, it's like Leo was saying, it's to be for people, for your personal success, for vitality, for seeing fear in your mind, being for your heart, and also love, because love seems to be just the well, it's just really, if these conversations have shown me anything, it's that love is the most powerful thing that you want to shift or change or recreate or repair or invigorate something. Love seems to be the way. It's like I always believed it in theory and always applied it as best as I could, but now it's like it's really a way of life. So I thank you guys all for showing up once again to this. It's super powerful, deeply impactful for me, and I'm sure for everyone who's listening. So thank you very much. I'll see you guys next week.